Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Dr. Leatherwood, Mrs. McCray,
Present.
Mrs. Gordon, Mr. Bean.
President. We have a quorum. Communications, announcements, and schedules.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I felt that we had a wonderful beginning as we officially welcomed our teachers back. I did mention this morning that we've been doing staff development all summer, and I do want to publicly thank Dr. Tomich, Mr. Talley, and Mrs. Dusky because they were really our planners of our staff development. The annex makes a perfect staff development format. So we have been looking at literacy. We've been doing a lot in terms of restorative justice and thinking about how our children feel and how we interact with them. And we have been immersing ourselves in strategies for teaching, reteaching, math, but we're going to be reaching out to our parents because this is not, we're not talking calculus, trigonometry, whatever. What we're talking about is basic math. And our parents are always with us. We feel that a part of the solution to that is getting them involved, and which we will. This evening, and we're going to do something we've never done before, and that is we reached into the homes, reached to Parent Square. Our parents are aware that we're going to be presenting the entire school improvement plan by school, and if they give us an hour, then they will go away with information that
1 hour.
I never ignore the president, but this time I'm not paying any attention to him. So we're ready. We're ready. But today was our official opening, and I thought it was magnificent. The energy of our teachers, they're determined. And one of the reasons I know they're determined, most of them came in over the summer, and many of them even refused compensation because they said we're only doing what it is that we should do. So I was very, very excited this morning about the first day, and they're back. But I also want to thank Mr. Walzak, Levitrus Grant, and our Lewis, because all of the buildings are very clean. We didn't know if we'd make it, I have to be honest. We did not know if we would make it because we ran into some issues. As you can feel the coolness in this room. We have to look at regulating and deciding if it's too cool or whatever. But isn't that a different kind of experience than sitting there and being too warm? So all of our buildings now are ready to accept the children. I don't know if we just put on sweaters and then we wait until the children come in, because this building feels very different with 600 young people, another 100 adults. So I think that's what we're going to find. But for our parents who are out there, and I hope that they're out there close to 2,000 strong or will be, we did finish just on time. However, the Huth will be a 3-year project, not a 2-year project. I did share that with the teachers this morning, not in terms of air conditioning, but in terms of some other things that we want to do at the Huth. What we found, and if you look in the back, there's a picture of the Huth, the first original Huth. What we did not know, Mr. President, is that some of that wood was still contained within the building. So when we took the air conditioning off, and then Mr. Walzak wanted to do a structural design format to find out if all the buildings could hold that kind of weight, then that's when, as they began to look very closely, we saw some of the original wood going back over 100 years. So that was removed, but that did slow us down a bit. So the next year, next summer, and of course we don't have enough time during the regular school year, then we're going to finish the Huth. All the other schools are beautiful, and I particularly, and I invite you when we have our opening to go to the Indiana to see their library. And I think from the teachers, it's beautiful. And the Arcadia, Mrs. Green was in tears, the librarian this morning. So a lot happened this summer that was positive, but we will go on next summer. But I think it's about the journey, and that's where we are. But our major goal was the air conditioning, and we will now decide if we stay at this temperature. But we think, at least Mr. Wozak, who monitors this, it's going to get warmer. Let's see how we feel when it's warmer. And then, but we want every child and every teacher to be comfortable. So, first day of school, Thursday, August 22nd. Labor Day, holiday, no school, obviously. Then we go into our open houses, and I'm excited about that because when our parents come into the building, they bring a different energy, and they too will be able to not only meet the teachers and the administrators, but to ask questions about what we intend to do academically. So the first one out, Mrs. Hughes, September 4th, the Sauk Open House, followed by the 5th, Indiana, Illinois on the 10th, Huth on the 11th, Matteson the 12th, Richton Square on the 18th, and then the 19th is the Arcadia. I do invite all board members, and we will remind you to come. I have the joy of attending each of the open houses, and each of our schools is different, not just because they're organized by grade levels, but they're different simply because we feel that teachers, it's an art, it's not just a science, that each building should be able to define how they approach instruction and how they embrace their children. So I will certainly invite you to join me at all the open houses. And of course, our next board meeting is September 17th. I do want to, if I could, on Thursday, we come up with our children, but our children ride buses. And we're the largest of the Rich Township school districts, and so we have a lot of buses on the street. I think there's a representative, I know he is, Joe, is it Dummiger? Okay, from Safeway. I want to thank you for a smooth opening at Southland. You're standing in the high school, but they do know how to get home by themselves. So even if they fell on their faces, which they did not, our students would be perfectly fine. But on Thursday, we're counting on the might of Safeway, and we want to thank you for last year, and we're looking forward to a productive year. You're certainly welcome to say something if you would like.
You know what, Safeway greatly appreciates the trust you put in us, and we will deliver what we told you we would deliver.
Well, I think that pretty much says it all. But thank you, sir, for attending. So on tomorrow, Dr. Tomich will be visiting the schools. All of the buses should be there. They will meet their principals. They will understand about the routes. However, I'll say something about our enrollment when I get to my report. But the enrollment certainly affects busing. And this year, just like last year, we're increasingly accommodating the younger children. And I have always felt that that's our greatest responsibility, and making sure that nothing happens to them, because I was not just being humorous saying that these students know their way home. They do. And they also all have cell phones, and I don't really worry in the same way about them. And so buses, because many of our suburbs don't have sidewalks or it's simply too dangerous. So I appreciate Safeway coming simply to tell us what they did, which is that our service will be just what it was last year. Not that we will not have a few issues. Dr. Tomich told me that we had over 200 calls today, parents changing the drop-off and pickup location. Some of them are deciding to put their children in daycare centers. Sometimes it's grandparents, but we sent out the notification as to where we intended to pick them up and drop them off so that they would have it. Their response to us, over 200 of them, was that there had been a change. So we'll be in the process of doing that. But thank you, Safeway, for what we hope will be just a magnificent year. But we're settling in. But that concludes my communications. The most important day to me is Thursday, the 22nd, when 162 opens, and I think it's going to be a magnificent day.
Thank you for your report. Are there any questions for the superintendent on her report? I have one. I observed you said that you found some of the original wood at Huth. Have we found a way to preserve some of that and possibly exhibit that at Huth as a reflection of the age of the building?
Not that particular wood, but when we go to the open house, I would love to show you what has been done.
Thank you.
Which goes back years. And so, not the wood that, in a sense,
Well,
had rotted, but it was just, but we did save a great deal of it, and I will certainly be happy to show the board what was done.
you say that's 175 years old?
Yes, sir. But who knew that with all of the changes we've gone through over time and all of the roofs that we have been on the building and all of that, that what they were doing was layering on top of what was already there, not taking down and replacing. And so in the gyms, we found wood that should not have remained there in the library. All of this had to come down. And so that did slow us down with some of our other tasks. But we did finish the air conditioning. But I would certainly like to show you some of the things. And also, I believe we have there some of the old minutes. And to me, they were very interesting as to how boards years and years ago thought about education. And I say that because the Huth was an elementary and high school combined. The clerk that for many years was at Richton Park went to high school at the Huth. So things have changed.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is entitled Audience to Visitors. It's a time in which any member of the audience who care to address the board on agenda items only can do so. You will have an opportunity later to address the board on any matter whatsoever. Is there any member of the audience who would care to address the board on an item that is contained on the agenda? Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually a parent here.
Okay, would you come to the mic and give your name, please?
Hello and good evening, board.
Okay.
My name is Ada Shadipo. I am a parent of a student at Arcadia School. He is now in his second year at Arcadia, finishing kindergarten and first grade, so I'm a little nervous. But since I've attended and been a part of 162, I have seen a lot of great things. But I wanted to speak specifically about the agenda item around where we talked about open houses and our first day of school. I think that we have a really strong opportunity to afford our students a little bit more planning and time when it comes to communication to parents, teachers, and staff.
Could I interrupt you, please?
Sure, sir.
When I said agenda items, I'm talking about specific items on the agenda. The issue surrounding opening is not an agenda item.
Yes, sir.
I want to hear what you have to
Sure.
say, but I want to hear it in the order in which we have set out. So I will ask you to come
Sure.
back when we reach that point on the agenda. But
Okay.
if you don't have a specific comment about the items on the agenda that we'll be voting on, we're not voting on the opening or anything like that.
Were we, I understand, sir. Were we speaking specifically about the open house, which Dr.
Okay,
Davis spoke to?
Again, that's not an agenda item.
Okay, understood.
Okay, it's not an item that we're voting. I want your comments on any specific items.
Sure,
that
sir.
we're going to vote on.
Appreciate
And
it.
I'll ask you to come back. And I appreciate your comments.
Sure.
I want to hear them, but in the appropriate timing.
Sure, please let me know when it is that time.
I will.
Pardon me. Thank you.
No, that's okay. No, thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Again, as is our practice, if there's any item on the consent agenda that any board member would like removed and made a debatable item, this is the time in which they can do so. Is there any item any board member would like removed and made a debatable item? Hearing none, may I entertain a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Ms. Ware.
Move to approve consent agenda dated August 20th, 2024, and every item contained therein.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. President, if I could, our Chief Special Education Officer, Mrs. Deborah Dusky, last month we voted on her retirement, and we're happy about that. This month, I'm even happier about the fact that she will still be with us, and there is a contract for her as she moves forward. Mrs. Dusky is one of the most knowledgeable people that I've ever met, not only in terms of special education, but in terms of pupil personnel services. But this is not unusual for us. There are quite a few people in the audience who have retired and then come back to us. I don't think this district would be the same without those individuals. But I do wish to thank Mrs. Dusky for considering us and making sure that all of our students are taken care of.
Might I ask you, will she still be assigned, you know, I wear a dual hat, will she still be assigned to
Speed?
Speed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But remember, the other person that is here, and Mrs. Dusky, perhaps at some time when we have open comments, she might want to share this adventure she's getting ready to go on. So I won't share because it's not on the agenda. But Yvonne Williams, which of course was our first Chief Education Officer, will be here when Mrs. Dusky goes on her agenda, goes on her adventure rather, if Mrs. Dusky wants to share it with us. So we are well covered simply because we have both of them, and they've been here for the past 2 weeks sharing, so I don't have any issue. I do want to acknowledge, however, our Director of Special Ed. I don't know if everyone is aware that even though Mrs. Dusky is Chief Officer, the Director of Special Ed and Pupil Services here in the district is Mrs. Goodley. Mrs. Goodley, why don't you just stand up just for a second, please? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, I will ask for a roll call. I want to point out on the agenda, there are two, I think there's three teachers that withdrew from the district without the proper notice, and we're asking that they be penalized appropriately for that. You note that on the agenda. I think it's item H, I, J, and K.
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have notified the state. The rules and regulations are quite clear in that you must give us 30 days before the start of school. And so as you can see, we are taking 4% of the money that all of the teachers have money left over from last year, so it's not as if we need to even get it from them. And so Mr. Englert, who is our CFO, has worked with them. Really, I think it's horrible that we can't simply depend upon integrity. But if that doesn't work, then we will take the financial penalty, and it has not, because they left us at a time when we were preparing to open. So we will proceed with the 4% minimally.
But I wanted to point that out to the board. I think it's appropriate, given how difficult it is to obtain teachers, that retention is also an important issue, and giving proper notice that they're leaving gives us ample time to, if we can, refill that position. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ware?
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. McCray?
Aye.
Mr. Bean?
Aye. The matter has been approved. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sharing something with you which is a combined chart that indicates our administrators, who they supervise, their duties. You may wish to study this and call me with questions, but it's very important that you understand the flow, and some of the people who are listed are involved with supervision of our other district, which is Southland. But you see everyone that reports to me, and I, of course, report to you, and our attorney, which is Mr. Robert Hall, is also a direct report to me and to the board. And you see basically everyone that is in this room is listed. This was quite a undertaking, and this was Yvonne Williams that created this chart, which indicates our primary responsibilities and who is in charge of them. But I think I will let the board noodle over this, and then I'm prepared to answer any questions. But the first thing I would like to do is to share the registration with you. And we'll start with the Richton Square, if we could, Mr. Lights. The Richton Square registers students after they have been screened and interviewed. And so at this point, registered, you see 75, not registered 3, but you also see that there are 55 children that are new to the district that have come in and simply haven't brought all of the paperwork. We, for a total of 141 students, we anticipate that the Richton Square will be at 200. That is generally the enrollment that we cap the Richton Square at, just as we move forward. But as of today, that is their enrollment. The Arcadia remains the largest school in the district. We're a little concerned about the kindergartners. If you see registered 38, you see not registered 3, but you see that there are parents that have not completed the whole process. In other words, have not brought us justification of their address 43. But the Arcadia remains our largest school at 491, presuming that everyone registers. I think it's going to be about 515 because we registered another 20 today. And we seem to be heavier on the Olympia Fields Matteson side of the house. But the other factor is, as I said before, more smaller children, and so you're going to see that in the numbers as we move up to the Huth. The Matteson, some similar. You're looking at 34 kindergartners, 12 not registered, but 34 parents need to come in and complete their registration. The Matteson closed at 405. They're now at 395, so there's very little change in their registration. Sauk is now at 251, but that's 214 registered. I think that they've been active in calling parents because the not registered, the registered, et cetera, are very small numbers, but we anticipate by the end of the week that there'll be 251. The Indiana, we have an issue with the fourth grade, and I need to make a decision by the end of the week. You know very well that 2 children is not a class. So we will wait and see what happens if there are children out there that would be registering and going into the fourth grade at the Indiana. If not, then I will let the board know what my recommendation is, but we will make it soon. What we don't want is that students to become attached to a location and to a teacher because they're very young. But 2 children is not a class. And then we see there's just 1 child out there that's not registered. But we will make a decision on Friday, and I will let you know immediately what we intend to do. But their enrollment is 193. Huth, very similar to that. They closed at 407. Their opening projected at 419. But you do see the 41 students not registered, 15 haven't completed the process, but the Huth will probably settle in about the 400 that we saw last year. Once again, the reason for this is many more children are coming in to enroll that are much younger, and we don't know the reason for the change. The enrollment in the district as a whole has not changed, but the grade level certainly has. So we're looking at the Huth, the Illinois registration, but remember, Illinois is a choice school. So actually, just about everyone registered in the semester because it's kind of like the same thing as Southland where you're pulling a ball out of the container, and that's how they're registering. But for whatever reason, we do see 33 not registered. We see 9 that haven't completed the process, and it's an online process. I know I'm not even going to ask Mr. Lights what our numbers are, but I know we have parents that are listening to us. Please, please, please go online and make sure that your children are registered. This affects transportation and it affects food, and we always would like all of the children to be there on the first day to greet the teacher. So that's where we are with the Illinois. And if we look at where we are as a group, totally registered 1,900 students, not registered 179, partially registered 217, the new to the district, and that's new to the district. And so what I have questions about that. If you come here the only way that you register is to come to the district office. So apparently what they're saying is they come to the district office with nothing. That, to me, is illogical. And, I always have to think of things from the point of view of the why. But that's 2357, which I think Mr. Englert would be about 100 above what we closed at. So whether that's a good number or not, because I still have questions about people that might have come to our district office and brought nothing with them. So therefore, we cannot include them in our enrollment. But can we say that our enrollment is stable? Yes. The projected enrollment, it was 2245. We're over that. But is that a clean number? I don't know that because, once again, going back to being logical. And I just don't think parents come to register because they're well familiar with the process. So we'll see what the number is. But we are showing, in terms of students registered, the 1,900, and then all of the various categories of students who have partially registered, not registered, etc., an enrollment of 2357, which is above our projection. Are there any questions about just enrollment in general?
Mr. President. A question, Dr. Davis. So you had commented about that we have a lot of young people.
Little
I am
people.
noting, yeah, I think that's exciting. And I think maybe the exciting piece about it is that it seems different than what we've talked about before, that the larger number of new to districts are pre-K and K, if I'm reading this right. And that sounds different than maybe conversations we've had in the past where there are a lot of folks coming to us without having had experienced the district in earlier years. At least this large group is, starting off, what do we say, where it all begins?
Yes.
At the square, and gives us an opportunity to bring them into the way we educate and so forth. So I think that's encouraging, if I'm reading it correctly. And so even though we have a lot of third graders, it appears that they've been with us a while. At least they're not new to the district as of this school year.
We had very few transfers out compared to the numbers of people that are transferring in. Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you for that. That's it for me.
Mr. President, I just a question about the two students that have enrolled at Indiana in fourth grade.
Yes, ma'am.
If there are not enough students for that class to be sustainable, then what happens to those two students? Are they given a choice to go to Illinois or Arcadia?
To the Arcadia, it would be the Arcadia feeds into the Indiana. But it was our goal this year to build the fourth grade at the Indiana. And we, parents at the Arcadia could have asked for a transfer. I believe that if they were going to ask for a transfer, they would have done it by now. However, students new to the district, that's two children, which of course is really not a class. But that would be, we can't send them to the Illinois, it would be back to the Arcadia. The Arcadia still will be slightly lower if we have to do that. But I'm going to give this till Friday. I really think that if parents are going to access us, that they would do so because everyone knows that we're open. Everyone sees the school buses on the street. But it is still a goal. I believe that I would love to see those children return in large numbers to the Indiana. But we can see that hasn't happened this year, and so therefore a decision will have to be made.
Thank you.
And one question, please. Yes. Just for clarity, every student that is shown not registered means that they are missing paperwork?
I want to be very honest with you, Mrs. McCray. I don't believe that. I simply don't believe that. So I think that I know that the schools have to begin to call parents, and when they do, and they're talking to the parent, Mrs. McCray, why isn't your child in school? I think we will totally find that out. This makes no sense to me that you would come to a district office with nothing in your hand, with just your child. I think our parents are sophisticated enough to know that they have to bring some proof of address. We do not request medicals at this point, so medicals are requested after the child enrolls. So I have questions, so I'm not going to respond to that in the affirmative. I don't know what they didn't have. And I've been asking and asking, I'm not getting a clear answer as to why. To me, that's a lot of children, and you came to us, you made a conscious effort to come to the district office. I just have questions as to why we would say that they didn't bring anything with them.
That's clear.
Okay, something that excites me, which this does not. You do have a copy of the performance objectives, and could I ask if we can show them to everyone? Everyone here, with the exception, we have a couple of parents are familiar with the performance objectives, but we're going to do something that we've never done. Within an hour, we're going to, each school is going to tell you some of the exciting things that they're going to do. If you look at my table, then you see that there's a school improvement plan for each of the schools. I've had the privilege and the pleasure of listening to some of the most exciting ideas that I've heard in years. And so I want parents as well as our board to hear what we have to say. Could we look at the performance objectives? The first goal simply means that we're working together as staff, as parents, superintendent, to implement a multi-tier support of strategies. And we go on about the why of it, but I don't see anything different with that. When we go to 2, that's when we see the first difference, and that is now we have data that tells us what children learned during COVID and what they did not learn. When you have data, then I think that you can proceed to determine how you're going to bring about a positive change. We had just come back last year, just come out of mask, and we were settling in, but now we're looking at the STAR 360, we're looking at the IAR, and it's clear to all of us that we have done an excellent job of teaching English language arts. That's clear on the STAR and on the IAR, but it's also clear that work needs to be done in terms of math, and I've shared this with the board before. So, but you will hear specifics from each of those schools as to what they intend to do. Within an hour, Mr. Bean, you're looking at me, but our report will be centered around 4 questions, and that is what we want our students to learn, which is the basis of all education, and how, number 2, how will we know if each student learned it, which of course is accountability, and it's also data. But how will we respond when some students do not learn? And I think that is what defines us as a district. In other words, just what are we going to do? Because we're not just going to accept the fact that for whatever reason there are voids. Now, we're not talking about sophisticated math, calculus, trigonometry, etc. We're talking about basic math facts. And then the 4th question, how will we extend and enrich the learning for students who have demonstrated proficiency? In other words, what happens to the students? What are we doing with those students who are in our gifted classes? And they are that group of students. And I don't want to give the impression that everyone is struggling, because they're not. There's some students that scores are through the roof simply because they have mastered. And one of the things that Dr. Hamilton is doing, we're looking at hosting here in our district office a master's program for the teachers or seeking endorsement and gifted. When COVID began, the state board I guess they had to back away because so few people were going to school from certification or endorsement and gifted. We think that those teachers would benefit from having a program specifically from them, but we also know that having it here in-house saves time, saves energy, and it's more likely that teachers will participate. So we're looking at that. But these are the 4 basic questions. And then finally, and I'm not sure that we need to talk about that, but our CFO will talk about the budget at the end. We do have a balanced budget, but there are nuances and questions that you may have, and so therefore he will do that. But Mr. President, what I'd like to do is to begin with everything begins at the square. And so, Mrs. McGuire, what are you going to do? What do you want the children to learn? What is it that you're going to do? And I'm hoping that there are a ton of parents out there that are joining us. But, Mr. President, if I could just share this. Even if you're at work and you can't join us tonight, it's going to be on YouTube, and we're hopeful that every parent will make use of the YouTube link and will join us at some point. So, good evening, Mrs. McGuire, the Richton Square.
Good evening, Dr. Davis and board colleagues and family on Zoom or YouTube, wherever you are right now. We are Richton Square, and we are continually on an improvement plan. Where it all begins. At Richton Square, we grow the whole child. So we seek to meet their individual social, emotional, and education needs, and we build the foundation that will continue throughout their lives. I am going to go ahead and go to we use multiple resources which I can address when we get to the questions, so we can go ahead and move through, because I would like Dr. Davis to keep her word that this is an hour. Oh, I want to start before we move to the 4 goals that attendance matters. And so this is something that we are keeping as a number 1 priority throughout the district and in our building, that every student every day to accomplish what we want to do, and with the families and with our children, we need the students there. And we want to note that attendance matters, that daily attendance provides access to information and experiences, especially for our young learners, resources and relationships, and positive impacts students' sense of belonging. This attendance fosters social interactions and connectedness, and attendance remains the leading indicator for student success. So I think that's foundational for us, because we're building the relationship, we're building their attitude about learning, and so the more they're there. So I want to start by saying we need our students there. So what our students are going to learn. That includes identifying our priority academic standards. We review early learning and developmental standards and identify essential skills. We focus on foundational skills. That for us, we assess continually shapes, colors, numbers, upper and lowercase numbers, all these precursors to reading, all the counting and patterning, the precursors to basic math skills. We assess and we build. We also look at what they're expected to know in kindergarten. So we definitely layer a lot of kindergarten math assessments in to help that we're preparing them not just for tomorrow, but for the next year that they're coming. That's what they're going to learn. How do we know when they've reached their targets? We continually use formative assessments. We use summative assessments too, 3 times a year, but we are continually formulating, readdressing our structures and seeing what they know. We document, we use a program, Teaching Strategies Gold, which is an ongoing authentic assessment. So we don't just test on one day, we test and collect data through a period of time, and work to assess and watch their development, watch their individual progress, their group projects, and adapt our own instruction and experience opportunities to what they're learning. We know they've learned it through those summative, but we also know before we get to the summative where they're at. So that, like I said, it's a continual circle. Assess, re-instruct, readjust, assess. Very similar to what we do in older grades. What will we do when students have challenges? Well, we have a unique opportunity in that we address challenges continually. We don't wait till don't have to wait till we get to a test, because we are continually assessing. We have daily center times. In most classes, we have multiple center times, which is some small group instruction. We also have a choice time where they are applying what they learned in instruction on their own, which gives us time to extend when we get to extension, to ask questions and to address those things. We want to foster timely interventions. We use our ESGI, which is our intervention assessment process. We use RTI. We use our PBIS, because how they feel about learning definitely affects all our learners, but especially in our primary grades. So we try to build that whole child and set them up for success, not just for us, for the next years to come. Though we don't have a gifted preschool classroom, I believe that potentially I have a building full of gifted students. And so we extend learning in every area possible. We provide opportunities for students to apply and utilize skills. We build interest and experiences. We connect concepts and extend knowledge. We give them problem-solving tasks. And we continually use questioning and utilize thinking questions. When they get to the older grades, we call them, higher learning, but we call them thinking questions at the Square, and we ask questions. We don't challenge what they're saying, we just ask them to explain much what we do when they're older, but we are so excited some of the answers that we get. We learn from our students every day as much as they learn from us, which makes going to work just a pure joy. But questions like, what would you suggest? What would happen if? How would you explain? What other way would you choose? Sometimes you don't think they understand until you ask them to explain what it is. And so we try really hard not to interpret for them, but have them communicate to us. And that builds their social skills and their thinking skills as well. So again, my building is full of potential gifted classrooms. So we continually work that through. Primary focus, just a summation, is to provide our nurturing environment to address the physical, social, and emotional needs of our students. We want to address the academic needs, which is what we just covered, of our students, with an emphasis on building a foundational skills in mathematics, reading, and language arts. So all of the things that we are teaching and learning and supporting with our students are all precursors of things that they need stabilized to be successful in their next steps. Because it all begins at the Square.
Thank you, Mrs. McGuire. And just a reminder that the Richton Square is a pre-kindergarten school, and it's rated in a different way. They have 5 consecutive years of a gold medal, which is, I think that they want something that the students can identify with. That's my estimation. But thank you, Mrs. McGuire. I'd also like to say to the board, if you have questions, if you would write them down. We start at 7:14, Mr. Bean. So we still have, so if we have time at the end, then we will. Good evening, Dr. Healy from the Arcadia. Where are you? Okay.
Good evening, Dr. Davis, Board of Education, Cabinet, colleagues, and 162 family, and those of you online. It's really good to see you tonight, and thank you for this opportunity. Every year, Dr. Davis challenges us to make the new year better than the year previously. So Dr. Davis, 2024-2025 will be Arcadia's finest hour. So we at Arcadia have 3 priorities, and those 3 priorities directly align with our summative designation, which is really the ranking that we're given by the state. Our first priority is school culture and climate, and what that really is just making our students feel good about themselves and feel like they have a wonderful place to learn and grow. So of course this year, as Dr. Davis has stated, we will be implementing those restorative practices, which really deals with relationship building between our students, between our teachers and our students, between the administration and the students. So we'll be doing that as it relates to school culture and climate. Our second priority is attendance. Attendance works. Every student, every day, whatever it takes. So if we build a place where our students can learn and grow, and our students come to school every day, then our third priority, which is really our most important priority, becomes easy. That's student achievement. So today I'm going to focus on student achievement and what we're going to do differently at the Arcadia this year. So Dr. Davis asked 4 questions. The first question she asked is, what do we want all students to learn? Well, over the last year, we've actually transitioned to standards-based grading. So what we want our students to learn is actually the priority standards. And those are the standards that every student needs to know in order to be ready for the next grade level. What does that mean? That means we want them to be IAR ready, and the way that they will do that is by mastering the priority standards. Her second question is, how will we know if they have learned? Well, this summer, we have spent time as a district putting together assessments, looking at ways for teachers to make sure the students have mastered at grade level all of those standards that are priority standards. So every teacher has a binder with different assessments, differentiated, to make sure that they have mastered those standards. And the questions are in different formats. So today I'm going to focus on her question number 3. But I don't want anyone to worry, because we do have all of that differentiation as it relates to her 4th question, which deals with how are you going to enrich or how are you going to enhance your program. Well, we still are going to have at Arcadia our math specialists, so those math masters classes. We're still going to have our win time, what I need time, which means that the students will be reading on their level with either a reading specialist or a teacher. We have lunch and learn, we have snack and study, we have STEM club, we have book club, writer's workshop. All of those things are still in play. But what I want to talk about is what we are going to do differently. What will you do when students have challenges? Well, this year at Arcadia, you're going to see a little bit of a difference in our Tier 1 instruction. And when I say Tier 1 instruction, that's the entire classroom. So in classrooms across Arcadia, we are bringing the science of reading into our already balanced literacy classrooms. What do I mean? The science of reading is really just honestly a focus on phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension into our balanced literacy classrooms, which really deal with working with words, guided reading, self-selected reading, and writing. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in the kindergarten through 2nd grade and what that looks like in the 3rd and 4th grade. In kindergarten through 2nd grade, you're going to see more oral language development incorporated into our comprehension lessons. What does that actually look like in the classroom? That looks like collaborative learning. For those of you who know, that's the Kagan strategies. What are the Kagan strategies? It really just means giving students the opportunity to express themselves, to talk about big ideas, to then in writing describe what it is and look at big picture. So it's really collaborative learning, right? And also more read-alouds. We're going back to those read-alouds because it gives students and teachers the opportunity to share ideas. Oral language development, that's the first thing you're going to see differently in our K through 2 classrooms. You're also going to see intentional, systematic phonemic awareness lessons. Well, phonemic awareness is really just auditory and oral, right? So what you're talking about is working with sounds, blending, okay, sand, right? That's blending, and, okay, and this one my reading specialist told me to be very careful if I enunciate right, but segmenting, ish, right? 3 phonemes. So you're going to see lessons like that and things like manipulation of words, right? So sit, take away the S, what do you have? You have it. Add an H, what do you have? You have hit. A program we use is called Hegarty, and you're going to see 15 to 20 minutes of phonemic awareness instruction directly related to those type of lessons so that students really start to understand their words, right? Coupled with that is systematic phonics instruction. What does that mean? It's really applying the phonemic awareness skills of blending, segmenting, and manipulating phonemes with print that represent each sound. Letter-sound relationships, that's phonics, right? So again, 15 to 20 minutes of pure phonics lessons. Now, we all took phonics in grade school, so we're not talking about different. We're talking about going back to those foundational skills that we know are so important so that all of our students can read. We are going to prioritize high-frequency words. Now, I know with the science of reading, and those of you listening at home, nowadays, memorizing high-frequency words, that's a bad word. We're not asking students to memorize high-frequency words. We're asking for them to prioritize high-frequency words. What does that mean? That means practicing them, but it's okay to sound out the word. It's okay, and it's okay to decode. Decoding is another big piece in the science of reading. So these are not new ideas. These are just things that we're going to focus on so that we're going to make sure that our students are able to read by the time they get to 3rd and 4th grade, which they will be taking the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So what does the science of reading look like in 3rd and 4th grade? Well, that's comprehension. So that's close reading, and close reading is exactly what it sounds like, making sure that you pay close attention to the text so that you can make meaning in text. But it's teaching strategies, paraphrasing, summarizing, clarification, all of those skills and strategies that students need on the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. It's vocabulary instruction. Years and years ago, Dr. Davis introduced us to the word of the day. That's exactly what we're going back to. Actually, one of the teachers, she actually wrote the word of the day for the entire year with the help of some of her students, because introducing sophisticated, interesting words into students' vocabularies is part of vocabulary instruction. The other piece of it is prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Morphology, right? So we've reimagined reading at Arcadia School. So what's the prefix, what's the suffix, and what's the root? And then knowing what that is as we figure out different words. It's about fluency. So we have those 1-minute timings that we use, but it's also incorporating strategies like echo reading, choral reading, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It also involves performance reading, so reader's theater, and different ways to get students to read in real-world situations, which then asks you to use more authentic reading strategies, so like book clubs and writers' workshops, where students are actually using what they've learned in class in real-world situations. So that's what it's going to look like at Arcadia in our Tier 1 instruction in our classrooms as it relates to English language arts. But mathematics is important, and we are going to change that a little bit too. What you're going to see in our Tier 1 instruction as it relates to mathematics really is the focus on the priority standards. What do I mean? Those are the standards that develop a strong foundational knowledge and deep conceptual understanding. So it's making sure that every skill that the student needs to know at that grade level is mastered. We are going to make connections. As we do in reading, we're going to do it in math. So not only use engaging vocabulary, but we're going to make connections. We know that multiplication is merely just repeated addition. And it's using that vocabulary and making those connections with our students that will really help them to grow this conceptual understanding, which really asks them to go deeper, to answer multi-step questions and things like that. But we are not forgetting about procedural fluency or knowing your math facts. So not only is it on the standards-based report card now that we need to know, so if Steph knows her +1s and +2s, that's wonderful, but if she's having a little difficulty with her +3s, your parent is going to know that. But parents, I know there's a lot of you out there, we have a big ask this year, and that is to work with your students on their math facts. We are going to have videos and things like that for you, but at the same time, work with your students on math facts. It's the pluses and the minuses in K through 2. It is the multiplication timetables in grades 3 and the division tables in grade 4. We are asking for your help in knowing those math facts, because that will help us with the more difficult procedural fluency, which is subtraction across zeros, which is double-digit multiplication, division with remainders. All of those things are going to be part of our instruction, but we're asking for that help. And finally, application. So like I said, taking everything that they've learned and then asking those higher level questions, asking if you know the formula for area and perimeter, now I want you to build a pool. Well, how are you going to build the pool? What's the area? What's the perimeter? How much backyard space do you have? What is that going to look like? So it is really looking at focus, coherence, procedural fluency, deep conceptual understanding, and application. And those are the changes that we're going to have in math. So we have some wonderful things at the Arcadia, and we're looking forward to a wonderful school year.
Thank you so much, Dr. Healy. Thank you. Mrs. Houston, what say you?
Good evening, everyone. So I'm bringing you greetings from the Matteson. So good evening, Dr. Davis. Good evening to the board, our cabinet and colleagues, and good evening to all of our parents from the district. So I'm going to tell you about the school improvement plan for Matteson School, which is, of course, driven by the 4 questions of achievement that you've heard throughout the evening. So if we go to the next slide, it just lists the 4 questions there. At Matteson School, learning is required. So we are committed to accelerating learning for all students. So Acceleration is our focus. So that means we're focusing on the present, which means what is it that the students need to know so that they can excel at their grade level standards. Our goal is to make sure that we bring all students to grade level or beyond, and this means that we start on day one with our teaching. So, what are you going to see at Matteson? You're going to see us prioritizing those standards and making sure that we are embedding in our units and in our lessons all of the prerequisite content that students need in order to fill the gaps so that we can get them to where they need to be. The next slide will show 5 focus points that we have. Data-driven instruction, observation and feedback, student and staff culture. Those are the actions that will be happening at the school from the staff and the students to get us to where we want to be. And then, of course, professional development. The majority of our actions are going to take place in our professional learning communities, our PLCs. Our teachers meet weekly as a grade level, and I'm going to review some of the actions that will be taking place with each of the 4 questions. So the first one is, what is it we want our students to learn? So as you can see, our focus, and let me just tell you, the work has already began. Thank you to Dr. Davis and the board with standard-based grading. We have already begun some of the work. Our teachers have already been working over the summertime too. So we are prioritizing standards. We are taking a look and grouping standards into units. We are developing the scope and sequence, which we have done through revising our report cards this summer in terms of what we're teaching and when we are teaching it. We're making sure that we are providing the rigor and identifying what rigor we need for each standard so that we know what it is and how students should answer the various levels of questions that they're going to see, especially on our state testing. We also are going to identify the practices that they need in order to learn the content standards. So this summer, our SVG teams throughout Illinois, Arcadia, and Matteson, our teams work together to revise those standards. They work together to revise the report card, and you will hear in a little bit about how they worked on some common assessments too. So that we identify what the students need to learn in order for us to be successful on the standards. So that takes us to question number 2. How will we know if students have learned it? So our teachers met all throughout the summer, and they created common assessments for each of the standards that will be tested at each grade level. So we're going to be looking at, in our PLCs, working together as a team to identify scoring rubrics. We want to make sure that the level of expectation is the same throughout the whole team, and that one teacher is not higher than the other, and we want to make sure that we all have high expectations so that our students can succeed. So we're going to use common scoring. We're going to take a look at rubrics. We're also going to analyze that data. And that means bringing our results, bringing in the test papers and the assessments that the students are using. That way I can look at and see that if the teacher next to me, maybe her students succeeded on questions that my students did not. Then that means I need to communicate and collaborate with that teacher. What strategies did you use? Maybe I can implement my strategies so that my students can get to that same level too. But it's all about that communication in our PLCs and that teamwork so that we can make sure that we are all in it together for our students. So we're going to identify those trends that we see when we look at their formative assessments, and then we're going to use that information to make changes. Now, one of the things that we found is in order to bring students to where they need to be, we need time. And at school, we just never have enough time. So one of the things that the common assessments are going to help us with is to provide ways to identify extra time. When we do our pre-test in the beginning of a unit, or we're giving our common assessments throughout the unit, that's going to help us identify what is it the students already know so that we don't have to waste time on that and continue to push forward and move on. And again, that's where that acceleration is coming in. Some of the ways we are also going to try to get that additional time is through providing tutoring. Also, all of our specialists help us out within the building with providing interventions with the students. So we will still be utilizing that. They help us with interventions for both math and reading. And we're also going to be talking about involving parents more so in this process. Our third question, how will we respond when students do not learn? Now again, we are looking at the trends from the common formative assessments. And we want to see exactly what it is they're having trouble with. And then, as one of my colleagues stated before, we're not waiting until the end of the unit test. We're being intentional with planning the formative assessments throughout the unit so that as soon as we look at the data, we can then stop and make changes as needed. We can meet as a team in our PLCs to discuss the strategies that we're going to utilize, and if we need to switch students or have a group of students work with different teachers that have more capabilities in a certain area, then that's what we're going to do. But that change will be done immediately. So if we do get to the end of a unit, even though we're providing interventions along the way, because we will utilize Tier 1 interventions, but if we get to an end of the unit and we see that there are still students struggling, then we will begin to implement Tier 2 interventions. At Matteson, our intervention time is called Smile Time, so that's students at Matteson School involved in learning experiences, where we will use that to catch up those students that may show that they still need some extra learning. And then our fourth question, how we extend and enrich the learning for those who demonstrate proficiency. So again, that's that data, Mr. Talley. That's what he's always saying. So we're taking a look at that. And we're going to look at how we can re-engage our learners so that we are deepening their understandings. We want to make sure that we are teaching and providing activities on higher cognitive levels, that we raise the text complexity, and that we're providing them real-world situations and projects that they can explore and investigate, and providing them with situations that have multiple answers. We also want to make sure, again, that we're basing our decisions based on what we see on the data so that we can provide each student with what they need. So one of our other points was observation and feedback. As administrators and instructional leaders, we want to make sure that we are providing support to our teachers. So we will be participating in our PLCs and working in the classrooms with the teachers and the students. One of the things, and I want to give a shout out and thank you to Dr. Davis, she allowed the administrators this summer to go on professional developments. And we had a team from Matteson that went on a professional development with Solution Tree. And we heard a lot of wonderful things that involve the actions that administrators need to take, teachers need to take, students need to take, that we are looking at bringing back and implementing within our building. So within our building, in addition to Parent Square, just an update on our communication that we have for the district, we want to come back and we want to share that information with our teachers and begin implementing it. So in-house, we're going to be looking at our PBIS and restorative practices so that we spend less time on behavior situations and more time on academics. We're going to be doing professional development on the PLCs, how we will work in the PLCs to analyze our data, and how that will then lead to, if necessary, MTSS, interventions, and progress monitoring. So those all go along with our 5 points that we were focusing on that will help us reach our goals. And because it takes a village, we also need you, our parents. We need you to help us. That's another way to get that additional time to catch students up to where they need to be. And again, you're going to probably hear this all night about reading logs, math logs, all of those things. So when we're reading at home, it's not just about the students reading to the parents. It's also about the parents reading to the students. They need to hear your fluency. They need to hear the inflections in your voice so that you can model that proper reading. We want to make sure, again, those math facts have to be learned at this lower level. Of course, every grade level is important, but at Matteson and Richton Square, we give them those foundations to be successful at the intermediate building and at the middle school building. If they cannot read successfully by third grade, they are going to struggle. If they don't have their math facts down packed, then they're not going to be able to perform well when it's time to do the math in the intermediate in the middle school buildings. Also, again, attendance. Parents, we need the students to be at school. We have all of these grand plans. We have the interventions. We also received some training on some interventions last year that we're all set and ready to implement. But we need the students there so that they can receive it too. Okay, so our goal is to improve our parent involvement and make sure that they are a part of the education. So as you can see with the next slide, basically, we're taking the students where they are, and then we're going to get them to where they need to be. Okay? Thank you.
It excites me. Mrs. Asana, the Indiana Wildcats. And good evening, Mrs. King. How are you?
Good evening.
Good.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Davis. Good evening to the District 162 Board, fellow administrators, as well as our parents and families of District 162. I'm Mrs. Hatsona, the proud principal of Indiana School.
And I am Assistant Principal Christina King, proud as well.
This evening, we'd like to share with you how small steps at Indiana School can lead to big achievements. Dr. Davis asked us to answer 4 questions tonight. Those 4 questions: what do we want our students to learn? How will we know if each student learned it? How will we respond when some students don't learn it? And how can we extend or enrich the learning for our students who have demonstrated proficiency? So the first question is, what do we want our students to learn? Mr. Light, thank you. The first thing we want to do at Indiana School is look at the basic foundational skills that our students walk in the doors with. So across the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, we want to make sure that we review these basic skills. From using 4 operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, with whole numbers to solve problems, generalizing place value, understanding for multi-digit whole numbers, using that place value knowledge to understand the properties of operations to perform multi-digit arithmetic. We want our 5th graders to understand place value when they come in. We want them to be able to perform those operations with multi-digit whole numbers and with decimals to at least the 100th place. We want them to be able to use equivalent fractions as a strategy to add and subtract fractions. And we want to keep in mind that these are the basic skills that our students actually should have as they enter Indiana School. We recognize that there are times when our students do not come in, Dr. Davis, with those basic skills, which is why we will spend at least the first week, possibly 2, reviewing and assessing these skills. We want to make sure our 6th graders understand ratio concepts and use ratio reasoning to solve problems. In our pacing guides, we always make sure that our 6th graders begin with ratio. We want them to be able to apply and extend previous understanding of multiplication and division to divide fractions by fractions. And as you can see, as they go up the grade levels, those skills build upon one another. We want them also to be able to apply and extend their understanding of numbers in order to understand rational numbers as well. Throughout the entire 24-25 school year, there are specific standards that we will focus on at Indiana School. This is in addition to those focus standards. Those basic skills. These are based on the IAR evidence statements. So the evidence statements show us how our students performed on specific standards in relation to the state as well as the district. Please note that the skills and standards that we suggest are not an exhaustive list. These are simply the skills that we are going to be focusing on throughout the year as a result of the IAR assessment. So as a building, we note that our students need improvement in modeling and reasoning from a math perspective. We certainly need to improve in the areas of geometry as well as problem solving, number and operations of fractions, measurement and data, operations and algebraic thinking, number and operations in fractions, and numbers and operations in base 10. And that is our third and fourth, our rising fourth graders that will be coming in to us, hopefully, in a couple of days. In terms of our ELA instruction, we certainly want to focus on specific skills as well. We're looking at how two or more main ideas of a text, how they are supported by key ideas, key supporting details. What was interesting, Dr. Davis, as we looked at our evidence statements, we recognized that this particular standard runs across third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grades in terms of a lower level of proficiency. So we will be hitting main idea extremely hard at the Indiana. We also look at vocabulary. Just like my colleagues, vocabulary, word knowledge, word use is an issue. Spelling test. We will not focus on spelling tests at the Indiana, Dr. Davis. The reason for that is it is not research-based in terms of vocabulary acquisition. We want to make sure that our students are learning new words and developing a robust vocabulary. Spelling tests, we have found, only give students an opportunity to learn those words for a segmented amount of time. And when you ask students about those words, subsequently, they may or may not even know what those words are. So our focus will not be on the spelling of the words more than the actual vocabulary usage, knowledge, the etymology of the words, word parts, base, prefix, suffix, and overall word study. We'll also be focusing on comparing and contrasting basic text structures. We have found that our students at the base level certainly can understand certain text structures. However, when we get into more depth and rigor and more complex text, we recognize that our students sometimes struggle with the analysis of cause and effect. They struggle with the analysis of comparing and contrasting and why the author may have chosen that particular structure. So we want to make sure our students are able to provide a comparison and contrast of overall structure, be it chronology, comparison, cause and effect, problem solution of events, ideas, concepts, or information in two or more text. We want to make sure that we are presenting our students with paired text, be it informational or literary. We want to make sure that they understand how to look at two or more texts subsequently and analyze those texts. Again, these are basic standards, focus standards that we noted, Dr. Davis, were across the grade levels. So as a building, these will be focus standards for the Indiana students. Keeping in mind, again, this is simply a sample. This is by no means an exhaustive list of what we want our students to learn. The next question is, how are we going to know that our students have learned it? Mrs. King.
Thank you, Principal Hassona. Good evening, everyone. How will students be assessed? Principal Hassona said it. Within the first 2 weeks of school, the Indiana students will take baseline assessments in reading and in math. This will give the teachers a threshold on driving instruction from day one in the classroom. The Indiana students will be assessed utilizing types 1 through 3 assessments. This includes IAR, our Illinois Assessment of Readiness, STAR 360, which is our district benchmark assessment, which is given 4 times a year, and type 3 formative, summative classroom assessments, including classwork and homework, which includes exit slips as well. A question was raised, how will we respond? Indiana will use a 360 wraparound support of academic personalism. After the students have been assessed, the Indiana administrative team will make data-informed decisions by incorporating 5 core principles of multi-tiered system of supports, which is known as MTSS. They will include equity and inclusion, data evaluation, collaboration, family engagement, and leadership. These are the 5 pillars of MTSS that will help us offer academic personalism to each Indiana student. Each student, ladies and gentlemen, will walk away with a prescriptive measure, a detailed plan for their academic success. The academic and behavior thresholds will include, to support our students academically and behaviorally, ICE time, which is intervention centralized time for everyone. Our ICE time is our school-wide intervention, where all students at a certain time of the day are moving, and they have a design class specifically for them where they can be successful and we can tackle those skills where those gaps and deficits are. Common questions that are asked during ICE time, we gathered those questions from our IAR digital library. So all teachers are asking the same questions and we're all on one accord. Also, during this time, it will be differentiated instruction, coupled with Kagan cooperative learning structures. And within this, we will also use restorative practices, utilizing the 5 CASEL standards of social emotional learning. This includes self-awareness. When you teach students how to become self-aware, they're able to make better decisions, and they're also able to regulate their emotions. And then with that, they're able to take what they've learned and build relationship skills with other students. Indiana pride ourselves in our 7-week program that's called SEL Camp. The 7-week program teaches students how to utilize standards, the 5 standards of CASEL, and apply them to everyday life as they navigate through Indiana school and beyond. We want to teach social emotional sustainability. That is very important as students matriculate through grade school. We also pride ourselves on our Paw Patrol committee. These are students that demonstrate leadership qualities academically and behaviorally, and they support us in morning greeting, hallway monitoring, and other plethora of responsibilities throughout Indiana school. Indiana parents, board members, and everyone in the room, we are looking forward to wrapping our hearts and minds around each student by offering a 360 academic and behavioral personalism support. Thank you, Ms. Sassona.
Thank you, Ms. King. So our last question is, what about enrichment? How will we enhance or enrich our students' learning? We'll do that through differentiated instruction, game-based learning, academic peer-to-peer mentoring utilizing Kagan cooperative structures, and prescribed enrichment activities that are suggested in our district curriculum. Finally, we have our school-based after-school enrichment programs, which include but are not limited to our choir, our band, book club, art club, drama, our STEM enrichment program, and all of these programs, for all of them, there is a GPA and behavioral expectation that must be adhered to in order to participate. So we at Indiana School are going to ensure that your students are learning and meeting our goals. Another layer of accountability at Indiana will be that mine and Ms. King's schedules are designed so that we can visit and observe our teachers regularly during instruction. We'll be observing them for instructional strategies, pedagogy, and cultural responsiveness, as well as noting how our students respond to the instruction. One thing that we have learned as administrators is noting how students react and respond to their teacher's instruction is a huge indicator as to whether or not the child is absorbing and learning the information. This also provides us an opportunity for real-time coaching as well as continued professional development. So parents, we are looking forward to you joining us as well, coming into the Indiana to help us as we grow our Wildcats. One other program that we are very proud of at the Indiana, Dr. Davis, is our Silver Cats. Our Silver Cats are actually retired teachers who come in at least once a week. We ask for 1 hour of their time so that they can help us as we move towards excellence.
Mrs. Hatsana?
Yes.
Everyone is using the initials MTSS for the benefit of our parents that are on the link with us. What do the initials stand for so that they can focus on that?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Those are multi-tiered systems of support. We want to make sure our parents understand that our support is layered, which is why we discussed the whole child. It is a wraparound service, not just from an academic lens, but certainly from a social, emotional, learning, and behavioral lens. So that is exactly what that means. Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Thank you both. We're running a little late, and I'm looking at
Thank you.
President Bean. We're going to make it, Mr. Bean. We're going to make it. Mrs. Hughes, how is the Sauk? And Mrs. Gonzalez, this is your first time addressing us. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Hughes. I'm the principal at Sauk Elementary School, joined by the assistant principal.
Ms. Gonzalez, it is wonderful to meet you all.
So at Sauk, we are focused on soaring to excellence this year. And so to start addressing the 4 questions, what do we want our students to learn? We are also going to be focusing on the priority standards. We have taken a look at those in conjunction with our test results from last school year, and there are a couple of them that we identified as areas of growth. We want to make sure that we are supporting our students with citing textual evidence in ELA. We noticed that even when they can answer questions about the text, them being able to find the specific piece of evidence that is in the text that supports their answer is an area that our students struggle with, and so that's something we'll be focusing on more this year. They also struggle with summarizing text, and so we're going to be making sure that we're giving them multiple opportunities to summarize and paraphrase in their own words, and that we're focusing on writing. Whether it is the math assessment or the ELA assessment, both of them require them to be able to explain their thinking and to provide details, and so we're going to be making sure that we spend a lot of time this year on writing and on academic vocabulary. In addition to the priority standards, we identified 3 to 4 standards at each grade level that our students struggled in the most. That means that if I'm in 5th grade, those 4th grade standards, we need to make sure we're covering right at the beginning of the year so that we can fill those gaps. And then for our 4th grade team, looking at what did we do with these standards that didn't work so that we don't have those same gaps at the end of this school year. That led to us having to focus on the expressions and equations domain in 6th grade. School-wide, you can go to the next slide. That focus on ELA looks like Writing Wednesdays. We're going to be focusing on narrative writing and the writing knowledge. Our students struggle with the conventions of standard English, and our 5th grade classes had the lowest growth for for ELA, and so we will have a PLC for our 5th grade teachers where we're focusing on just ELA and we're focusing on writing, where those teachers will be bringing in samples of student work and we'll be scoring it and looking at it together. Mrs. Gonzalez and I will be in classes every Wednesday watching students write with the idea that they build a portfolio, 38 weeks of school, looking at how they start at the beginning of the year and how their writing progresses over time. And then for math, we're also going to be incorporating those Writing Wednesdays, and we'll have a PLC for 4th grade and 6th grade that is focused on math. We really want to focus on how our students are building their mental math and basic facts. They struggle with our multi-step problems and with word problems, and so we want to make sure we're giving them the opportunity to not only do the procedural work, but to also be able to explain their thinking and have conceptual understanding. And so we're adding in math talks at the first 5 minutes of every math block. It's mental math, but it's also requiring them to explain it. And so if I can't explain it, I can listen to my classmate explain it so that I can start to hear it in student-friendly language and practice writing it. We also recognize that they need to have more type 2 and type 3 problems. When we looked at what types of questions they were getting wrong, the more complex the problem got, the more steps that the problems required, the more they got them wrong. And so we're going to make sure that we're giving them more at-bats with that in the classroom where they can struggle through it in a safe space. So the next question is, how will we know if they learned it?
Okay, so while we are going to be in the classroom looking at type 2, type 3 problems and getting through the intricacy of those problem sets, we are going to then ask our teams of teachers to come to our PLCs where we gather as a team collaboratively and we are engaging in protocols that are looking at student work with the purpose of how are students showing mastery, what's the feedback we're giving to students to further develop their mastery. Whether they're at a low level, medium level, high level, all students need to grow no matter what. And we are showing that investment also in asking our teachers to co-observe one another and give each other feedback. In addition to, of course, Principal Hughes and myself will be in the classroom regularly giving additional feedback, so they are getting that well-rounded, robust piece of how can we better serve our students, period. We also are going to be engaging in Kagan structures, which other schools have brought up as well. We are doing it as well, and so that'll be a uniformity.
We're also going to continue doing our common assessments. We give common assessments every week. The first week is ELA, followed by math the second week. And we use retired IAR questions so that our students are also seeing similar questions to what they're going to get at the end of the year. And then every week at grade level meetings, we then look at those and they're aligned to our scope and sequence and our pacing guides. All of our teachers came in over the summer and we looked at our pacing guides from last year and looked at how we did and said, where do we need to make revisions at? And then when students aren't learning it, what are we going to do? We're having intervention days. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're having our academic focus for interventions. We're doing writing on Wednesdays. And then on Mondays and Fridays, we are doing SEL and team building. And that is 40 dedicated minutes where teachers are able to pull small groups and work with them. We have small group time built into our ELA and our math block. And so we have periods of the block that is a full group instruction. And then we have times where our teachers are pulling kids. These 4 didn't get it, or you're struggling in this and you're going to come in the back. All of our pairs are also going to be working with pairs of students so that every adult in the building has groups of students in front of them and that our students who are struggling the most have a smaller ratio. And so if I am struggling the most, it means I'm sitting 1 or 2 with an adult so that I can get the intensive support that I need. We also have lunchtime tutoring. Our lunch block is 40 minutes. They can do 20 minutes where they do a lunch and learn so that they can also have additional academic time and students and parents can sign up for after-school tutoring. And then at the 4th grade level, we have grandmothers who come in. And they come in 3 days a week. And so 3 of our 4th grade classes have then a grandmother who comes in and they quiz them in the hallway. They're reading to them. They're doing math facts. And then we're adding a math problem of the week so that we can also try to boost our math scores and get them more engaged. And so every week, students will have an opportunity to get the problem of the week on Monday. They get to work on it throughout the week with their friends. They can work on it at home. And then when they bring those problem of the weeks in, you go into a raffle if you got them. And so we're trying to get them energized. Though it supports our core learning, it won't be tied to your unit. So it might be a puzzle. It'll be something that is more fun, but that also gives us more practice at math. Of course, it just went off. And so when students have it already and we want to enrich them, not only do we have our tutoring and we've got our gifted program, but we also have built-in time into some of our special schedules where for our students who are exceeding, they get pulled out instead of going to an intervention hour. They've got fun activities planned that are also academic related. We also have a math team that one of our teachers started last year. And so last year we were only able to do the last set of competitions. We'll be competing 3 times this year. And so at each grade level, we'll have a team of 5 students who participates based on their scores. We're going to be asking parents to come in so that we can have additional engagement so that we can push our students. And we're also going to be doing a parent survey and a student survey to see what students are interested in and what parents are interested in and having at the school so that we can get everybody engaged to enrich our students, with the idea that we hit our goals. And so we are looking to increase our growth at the 70th percentile, and we're trying to hit the state's expectation that we have 39% of our students meeting or exceeding. We're looking to have 13 opportunities for parents to come in. So for all of our Sauk Eagle parents watching, make sure when you come to open house on September 4th, you sign up. And we are also looking to decrease our chronic attendance. We know, like they said at the square, that we need students in school every day because when they are there, they are learning, and when they are not, they are missing out. And so those are the changes that are going to be happening at Sauk, and we are looking forward to a wonderful year, and we are going to be soaring to excellence.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughes and Mrs. Gonzalez. Dr. Mays, the Illinois.
Good evening to our board, to Dr. Davis, to our parents, and to all of my colleagues. From excellent to exemplary and beyond is where Illinois school is going. Our students start every day with a pledge that they all know by heart after the first or second week, and it amplifies exactly who we are. First statement, I believe that learning is important, so I will be on time every day and do my best to follow the school rules at all times. You can look at this, but if you walk down the halls of Illinois, give us till open house, every child, every teacher, this is how we start our day, with the affirmation that we will be on time, we are going to learn, and we are going from exemplary to beyond. Eric? We're going to, our mantra has always been to make education, academics, a fun and inviting experience. So we are going to continue to embrace our students with the warmth and love that we always have, with a lot of exciting activities, a lot of things to help our students as well as our community feel better. Last year, we unveiled our reading vending machine. It is filled with books. Our students throughout the day earn coins to get a book so that we can promote lifelong learning. So, what do we want our students to learn? The first step in answering the 4 questions was to identify the problems of practice that impact student engagement and achievement, and then to sit down with the entire staff and administrators to develop a plan. So the first thing is, we want our students at Illinois School to focus on developing fundamental skills and teach the key knowledge building blocks that each student needs to master the major subject areas. That was the first thing. The second thing was to meet the state standards. And thirdly, to complete more advanced coursework. In ELA, we are trying to develop the skills of phonemic awareness in kindergarten through 2nd grade, vocabulary skill building. We too have gone back to the old-fashioned word of the day. Our students are challenged every day to memorize, not just memorize the word, but to use the word in a sentence. We stop students along the way. What was the word of the day? What is the definition? How do you use it in a sentence? What's the part of speech? And we've been very successful with that. The skills for ELA include comprehension, textual evidence, and writing. We have noticed at Illinois School and all around that students are not writing as proficiently as they have in the past. We have also noticed in the age of technology that students are not writing legibly. So we are employing this whole program to make sure that we get back to the basics of writing. Not only writing creatively, but also knowing how to write in cursive. In mathematics, we are focusing on adding, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I was talking to Dr. Davis, Mr. Holmes, and I explained we have a very quirky teacher. math specialist. When you enter the building in the morning, as you get your breakfast, you're presented a math fact. And the students at first, they stumble, okay, but they know that Mrs. Murphy, as well as Mrs. Adams and a few other people, will be standing there with basic math facts. This is where we're asking for our help from our parents, from our grandparents, and from our community so that we can make sure that all of our students are very efficient in math. How will we know if each student has learned it? Well, again, data-driven instruction. Our students complete multiple formative assessments throughout the year. They also do formative assessments as well as summatives at the end of each unit. Students will demonstrate their understanding of the skills during the formative assessments while gaining direct and individualized, differentiated feedback and scaffolding. So what that simply means is, yes, we do take the STAR 360 4 times a year, but we're piling the STAR 360 on more than that, because that information on a monthly basis will help us know who has grown, who also needs more intervention, and who needs the differentiated instruction. Administrators will collaborate with teachers during the weekly PLCs to complete data analysis, also to provide a more detailed, the duty is in the detail, because we need to look at that very, very carefully, and each child at Illinois school will have a separate prescription. No two are alike. What Kaya needs may be different from what little Dr. Davis needs. So we want to prescribe prescriptions for each child so that we can create a formative learning plan for them. Each student's growth. These meetings consist of data provided by each student's performance-based assessment and their diagnostic assessment. How will we respond? And this is something that is dear to my heart. How will we respond when some students do not learn what we intend? Based on the individual student data, teachers will differentiate the instruction by creating small groups to focus on specific skills in order to bridge the gaps. Interventionalists. We have everybody in our building is an interventionalist. Our students will receive more intervention time than ever. We will provide the data from formative and summative assessments and from our weekly PLC discussions on data to ensure that every single student who has not mastered a skill will be provided an intervention. And at Illinois, we've been doing this for a while. So you see at any given point in the day that our interventionalists are working in small groups, in some cases one-on-one with our students. We provide interventions multiple times a day for students, all students, grades K through 8. Then at that point, we reassess. We analyze the data from the reassessment of that student until that student receives mastery. After they achieve, if they don't achieve the mastery level, we provide more support. Quick and simple. And we continue to repeat the cycle. How can we extend and enrich the learning for students who have demonstrated proficiency? Again, it's all about the data. Numbers do not lie. The formative assessment throughout the learning process, therefore students who are demonstrating proficiency and are in need of enrichment, we do not have a problem moving them to the proper level. That enrichment provides more rigor, more thinking questions, more challenges, more ways for them to express their thoughts. And in many cases, we have, at that point, placed students into the gifted program. Some of our additional focuses, we really want to put the focus on math. I'm trying to go back to the old-fashioned flashcards. Those things really did work. So we want to make sure that our parents are equipped with that. They will all receive a packet of flashcards. If it's primary, it will be subtraction and addition. If it's the upper levels, it will be multiplication. So we are working on making those for our parents. The other thing that we want to really home in on is workshops for our parents. Today, we heard several times that the parent is the first teacher, as my mom and dad were. So we want to make sure that at their convenience, by providing workshops during the school day for some of them that don't work, and also in the evening for those of them that do. But we want to make sure that our parents can help our students. Along with that, we want to bring community involvement to a new level. Anything that we have at Illinois is standing room only, but we also want to reach out to our community, our parents, by way of survey to see how they can come in and help us with math. We've also reached out to members of the Divine Nine to see if we can get involvement from them as well, and other community members. We want to create and support a culture of continuous academic improvement. Again, from excellent to exemplary and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. Mr. President, we know we're out of time, but we have one last school, please. Thank you. How are you, Mrs. Calvin? Okay.
I'm wonderful.
Bring it home.
I'm going to bring it home, and I'm going to be fast, I promise, because I'll be honest. First of all, good evening, Dr. Davis and Board of Education and all of our parents out there. My colleagues have done a great job of really speaking to the 4 questions, which really are from the PLC. Richton Square made those 4 questions very famous, and it drives what we do in all of our schools. So I am going to be brief, Dr. Davis. I would like to first introduce my team. I am Brenda Calvin. I'm the principal at Huth. There is Miss Amy Treadwell, assistant principal, Mr. Scott Chandler, assistant principal, and Mr. Rogowski, Mike Rogowski, the dean of students. This is the team that has done the work along with our teachers to really bring the 2024-2025 school year, take us off in with a great start, and we know we're going to finish strong as well. So at the Huth, our vision is that all students, all means all, are socially, emotionally, and academically prepared for high school. That is the charge of any middle school in our nation, in our world. So we take that very personally, and it is our goal to really stand on that and say, when our students walk across the stage as 8th graders and we hand them a diploma, that they are prepared for the rigors of high school. We exist at Huth, our staff, our students. We exist to ensure that our students have the ability and confidence to pursue all future aspirations. That's very important to us because middle school is the time when they start thinking about what I want to do with my life. When we talk about the 4 questions, the first question is, what do we want our students to learn? When we communicate with the high schools, when we look at the data from the IAR, we know that there are priority standards that my colleagues have mentioned. At the middle school, specifically in 7th grade for mathematics, we are going to really focus on expressions and equations, number systems, ratio and proportions. At the 8th grade, it's expressions and equations. Again, you can see patterns, as my colleagues talked about through the grade levels. There's patterns. So you'll see that really when we get to the ELA piece, but geometry and functions also at
the 8th grade level are places where our high school colleagues have said we really need to, they would appreciate us focusing there, right? But in addition to that, our IAR data states that our students can stand to grow in those areas. But in addition to that, reasoning and modeling with mathematics through written expression, our students not only need to be able to do the computation, they have to write about the math. They have to really be able to write about what they've, the explanation as to why they chose to attack a problem in the way that they've done. So that is mathematics, and I have to address a little bit of like the elephant in the room. The math fluency around addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division is still a problem in the middle school. So as my colleagues have asked, I am also asking our parents, go home, and I'm going to ask this again at open house, and we're going to ask the parents to give us some feedback, but I'm asking parents even tonight, see if your children know their times tables, times 6 times 6, 6 times 7, 8 times 7. Ask them. They should be able to give you those responses with automaticity at the 7th and 8th grade level. And that's going to set them up to be a little bit more proficient as they attack that higher level of mathematics. As it relates to ELA, as my colleagues have stated, citing evidence from texts, identifying central idea, and really writing across all disciplines, writing in history class, writing in science, writing in math. That's going to be our focus at the Huth this year to ensure that our students can communicate via writing as well. How do we know that our students have learned it? We all know that we take our STAR 360. It's our benchmark assessment in our district 3 times a year. That gives us some good information, and it allows us to kind of track where we're going. But the work of the PLC is really what's going to let us know if our students have learned it. So the common formative assessments, teachers will get together and create those common formative assessments. The students will take those assessments, and this is not necessarily always for a grade. The information from these assessments really drives the teacher's instruction. So they may or may not get a grade for that common formative assessment, but really it's the student work analysis that gives the teachers the information that says, okay, this is what I need to do now that I see how my students have performed on this assessment. In regards to what we will do if our students did not learn it. This year at the Huth, one of our changes is we've gone back to a block schedule, and because we know that more, Dr. Davis is clapping, and the reason for this is because, and I know why she's clapping, she's always talking to us about catching up, and we know research shows that in order to catch up, you have to give more time on task. So more time, if a student is struggling in mathematics, guess what? They need more time in mathematics. So our block schedule really does allow for that. It allows for it in a way that we have what we call our focused intervention time. That in math and ELA, that gives us almost 200 additional minutes a week when we count our after-school tutoring, that a student that may be struggling to learn a concept, that they can get that catch-up growth, that catch-up time. And so that's very, very important. And in regards to what will we do when they've already learned it? Because when a student sits for core instruction and the teachers look at that student work analysis and they say, okay, students, either they've got it or they don't. Okay, we talked about what we'll do with our students that don't we're going to give them that catch-up time. But guess what? The same thing has to happen with our students that have mastered that concept. They were able to learn that concept the first time around. They're ready to be enriched. Okay, they're ready to be enriched, and we have adopted wonderful curriculum in this district. Every single curriculum that we have adopted has an enrichment and an extension tasks that students can work at so they can be more rigorous, as I think Ms. Hasona said, so that they're using those critical thinking skills, and they're really doing more work. But also, there's an opportunity to accelerate. So if a student has mastered that concept after the core instruction, then teachers may say, guess what? This group of students, they're ready to move on to the next. No point in holding them back for the rest of the class to catch up, right? So those are the 4 questions, but the one thing I wanted to mention is ownership by our students. This year, a big shift is we are ensuring that our students take ownership for their learning. 4 times a year, students will review their own personal data, their attendance data, their Star 360 data, their behavior data, right? We're going to review that data. They're going to set goals. Students need to experience success, and they have to set their own. We all do the same thing. We have goals to get that next degree. We have goals to achieve, buy a house. We set goals. Students have to set goals, and they have to see themselves being successful at achieving those goals, so they'll continue to set goals in the future. So this is just a snippet, Dr. Davis, of what's going to happen at the Huth. We invite all of our parents out there to come meet our staff. We are fully staffed. We are ready to go, and we have a whole lot more that we want to share with you at Open House on September 11th.
Mr. President, I was privileged to have the full presentation, and so I'm excited about it. Our 4th goal is budget. And Mr. Englert, how are you?
Good evening, Dr. Davis, board members. On your dais, I did leave you a packet with regard to the proposed 2024-2025 budget. That's for you to take home and review over the course of the next month. There is no action this evening with regard to that. It's simply on display for 30 days for the board, for the public to take a look at. And obviously, if you have any questions, I'm available at any time to go through that. So what you have there on your dais is about a 3-page summary just highlighting some of the major points of the budget. Behind that is the typical summary of each fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then you have the detail behind that, and finally the official budget format, which actually comes from the State Board of Education. So, Eric, thank you, you have that up already. So just a brief overview. When we look at the budget, we have a projected surplus of about $338,000 from the operations fund. I would project that the district will have a financial profile score recognition again when we look at the end of the school year. And as a recap, there are 4 scores that the Illinois State Board of Education gives in terms of financial scores for school districts. Financial recognition is the top of those 4. Moving on, so just as a reminder, school district budgets, and this is throughout the state of Illinois, they're divided into funds, which are really separate business units for very specific purposes. You have your operating funds, which is your general day-to-day operations of the district. And again, this is what ISBE bases its financial scores on for the most part. And then you have our non-operating funds for things like debt payments, pensions, constructions, etc. These are generally not factored into the score except under special circumstances. So, of the operating funds, there's 4 essentially. The education fund, this is really where the bulk of most of the expenditures and revenues for the school district run through. Operations and maintenance, which is everything related to the buildings themselves. Transportation, again, of course, is anything related to busing. And working cash, you can think of this like the district's savings account. Looking at the non-operating funds, you have debt services for the payment of the district's outstanding bonds. Social Security and IMRF for all those related pension payments. Construction, and then the tort fund I won't really talk about. That's really not used by the district anymore. So this just gives you a summary, and again, this is in your packet. Just looking at those 4 operating funds and how they sum together, and if you look where I've highlighted in yellow, that's really showing that as you combine those funds together, you do have an operating surplus across all 4 of those funds together. Looking at the non-operating funds, those are really considered single entities. And so debt service, you do see a negative there, 694. Don't be alarmed by that. Essentially, the 2016 bonds in December 1st will be the last payment for those bonds. And the tax revenue for that payment was actually collected in the prior fiscal year. So that's why you see it as a negative, because the revenue came in the prior year. If you can go back, Mr. Lights. Looking at IMR Social Security, you have a surplus there. Site and construction, again, negative 623. That's because we have 623,000 again carried over from the prior year, paying off the remainder of the construction from this summer and really bringing that fund down to a zero balance. So in total, you see, again, operating fund surplus, total fund deficit, but again, the deficits on the total funds really is only because you had revenue coming in from the prior year taking care of expenditures for this year. Nothing to be concerned about. Okay, how does the district fund its operations? Essentially right now, based on the state funding, which I'll talk about in a minute, state funding this year is about 43%, which is the highest that the district has seen in quite some time. 40% from property taxes, and you have remaining 17% from federal and other sources. Looking at operational expenditures, District 162, much like most districts in the state of Illinois, about 67% comes from salaries and benefits. 18% purchase services, that's really primarily your food service and your transportation. And then everything else, rounds out the numbers there, supplies, capital outlay. That large number, or the 6% under other, that's primarily special education tuition. Looking at the operating revenue, about a 5.3% increase, about $826,000 from property taxes, an actual decrease for replacement taxes. This is a number we really don't know going into the year, and we never really know until the year closes out, but we are projecting a slight decrease in this because this is based on profitability of corporations throughout the state, so we try to be conservative in that number. Moving on with operating revenue under state funding, about a $3 million increase. As I mentioned before, we're seeing a larger portion of that funding coming from the state for the district, about a $1.8 million increase in evidence-based funding. I do anticipate that the district will receive the property tax relief grant again, which is about roughly that $1.8 million number. Also a $1.1 million increase in transportation. This is because last year the district took on that new transportation contract with Safeway. It was a significant increase in cost, and the state reimburses for much of those costs in the following year. So the state's catching up with that reimbursement. On the federal side, we're actually seeing a lot of grants fall off. So the ARP ESSER, that's the last of those COVID grants. That grant closed out this year in 23-24. The school climate grant, 23-24 was last year for that grant as well. And the school improvement grant, while the district will continue to receive it, it's about a $175,000 decrease. It's one of those grants that starts off with a larger number and it decreases over time. Looking at expenditures, about a $1.7 million or 3.5% increase. This is right in line with inflation. The last December over December inflation, which is used for the levy, was 3.4%. So this is right in line with that. 5.6% on salaries. Some of that is contractual increases, but some of that is some folks who were contracted previously that have now been hired in-house. So they moved to that salary line item there, specifically security and some of those registered behavior therapists. Benefits increase, we budgeted 15%. I really don't think it'll be that high. There was about an 8% increase in health insurance. And what we do with any new employee is we budget it as though they're going to take the highest cost insurance plan the district offers. Just to be conservative, I don't anticipate that will actually happen. A couple other things just of note. Student transportation up about $136,000. That's per contract. It's based on inflation, so that's a 3% increase there. Special ed tuition, we're anticipating about a $110,000 increase. Student meals, as we've talked about, we're seeing a nice decrease there with the new bid and the food prices coming in lower. Textbooks are lower this year because last year there was a science adoption. That's a very costly curriculum adoption. And so this year I believe it's social studies, if I'm not mistaken, and that's not quite as expensive. Some leases falling off this year, and then co-op fees from the Speed Cooperative are actually down. Just a couple other things. We have about $2 million left over to spend from the construction from this summer, and there is a $500,000 contingency built in there in addition to about $100,000 built in for any unanticipated building expenditures. Looking at the timeline there, Mr. Lights. So tonight, just a discussion, just kind of presentation of the overall budget. It was put on display as of the 18th of August. At the next board meeting, September 17th, there will be a public hearing to start the meeting, and then, of course, the board will be asked to take action on the tentative budget that evening, in September. Is there any questions I can answer now? And again, of course, as you go through the documents, I'm more than happy to answer questions, prior to the next meeting as well.
Any questions from members of the board on the budget?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. England.
Ms. Johnson.
With the Huth construction continuing an additional year, where will that be reflected then in what we're looking for, these construction costs that are being paid off some this year and so forth? How is that reflected in what we're looking at?
So not all of that $2 million I mentioned is wrapping up. Some of that is projected for next year. What will happen is, since that construction will start presumably sometime mid-June, we won't likely see bills for a lot of that until July, which will be the following fiscal year. So you have about $600,000 built in here for bills that might come in during that June timeframe, but the bulk of that money really will be in the 25-26 school year.
And you expect to have all the expenditures from Huth to show up in that time, or when will those?
Yes, so if they start work mid-June, we won't see bills until likely mid-July, and that will be the following fiscal year. So it's not part of this budget, or the majority of it is not part of this budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Craig?
Yes, sir.
I note that the property tax collections have fallen down to 89%, from a high of, I think, 92, 93%, somewhere in that range. Is there anything we can do, or are we just subject to the difficulties that owners are experiencing?
So there's a couple of things. So what the district has always done, and this really applies more to the commercial property, is that we do watch for tax appeals and get involved and make sure that they're being handled fairly at the Property Tax Appeals Board. But again, that's for the larger commercial properties, those that generally go through and protest their taxes almost every year, regardless of whether the valuation is correct or not. This year, as you've alluded to, this year what we saw is a shift in that property tax burden from commercial to more residential, and that's why a lot of folks on the residential side saw their taxes go up so much, not because the district raised its taxes, but because there was a shift in the tax burden from commercial to residential. So we are anticipating somewhat of a slower collection rate. I know that the treasurer's office has offered some payment options. So, but so far, we have not seen a significant decrease in what the district has received at the end of August and then, the end of July and going into the due date of August 1st. So we do monitor that. But generally, the district gets involved in more of those very large commercial appeals.
So basically, the collection rate is not anything we can affect.
There's not a whole lot, that the district can do about the collection rate itself, unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Mr. Bean, if I could, in my report, the last board meeting, a family asked about a fifth grade child who is currently enrolled with us at the Sauk and wanted to know if his little girl could play basketball with the Huth team at the IESA. So we contacted, I told you I would assume responsibility for this. We contacted the Illinois Elementary Sports Association. They explained if we had schools that were feeder schools into the Huth, that any child that wanted to try out, we're not interfering with the coaches, but to try out would be eligible. So the Illinois belonged to the IESA as well as the Huth. We have now enrolled the Sauk and Indiana into the IESA, and our athletic director contacted Mr. Rogowski and the parent, and so we will make it possible for these children to tryout. I say try out because, you know, we really do not interfere with the decision of the coaches. But now we have 4 schools that belong to the IESA, and we look forward to the family coming to the tryouts and the children. I guess the only issue in my mind are the size of the children. We know definitely, and talking to Mr. Rogowski and Mrs. Calvin, that the children are larger, and if you're talking about smaller children competing. Now, Mrs. Hughes and Mrs. Hassana had a wonderful idea, and that is intramural sports at the 5th and 6th grade level. So that doesn't require anyone's permission. We're going to look at both of those. But in response to the parent's question, his child now has an opportunity to try out. The IESA has approved it, but further, both the Sauk and the Indiana are going to do intramural, which means that children would be competing against other children of the same size and general age. But that was a question that was asked at the last meeting. That concludes my report, but of course I will answer any questions.
Yeah, the questions for the superintendent on the presentations that we have received. Now, I've noted that there are pieces of paper on everyone's desk that have a lot of questions, apparently a lot of questions. I would just ask that if you hear a board member ask a question, that I see you draw a line through one of your questions, so that we're not duplicating what we're asking.
Well, it's also possible, I'm happy to stay and to answer any questions, as well as the principals. So it's the will of the board, whatever you would like to do. Well, I will.
Please, go ahead. You mean there are no questions? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
We have 2 schools at each grade, at each basic grade level, the Arcadia and the Matteson, Sauk, and Indiana. Why aren't those goals the same? Why do we have a different approach to goals in each one of those schools when we have the same student population, age group, and grade group in each one of those schools?
I think if you heard the total report, you're hearing the presentation, which reflects the way that each principal thinks, then you're going to hear basically the same information and data and strategies, but presented in a different way. Now, there are some things that are unique to a particular school, but the standards are not. When the question, what is it that we're going to teach, it has to be standards-based instruction. If you talk about interventions, each school has a different way of intervening. In other words, providing additional help. But an intervention is an intervention, whether you call it smile time, or I'm trying to think of some of the other names in which the principals are describing it. So this forces us to think, but in essence, one of the things that we know to be true is that we need more involvement from our parents, particularly with the younger children, because mathematics in particular, our students, for the most part, are excellent readers. That's not the issue. The issue is basic math, and one of the reasons that I ask permission to send something out to the parents, ask them to join us, we want them to actively join us, and those kinds of things that can be taught at home, we do want them to become involved with it. But the standards are the same at every grade. What they choose to call them. Now, we could, and I don't really see a reason to do that. We could use the same names and so force them, but I believe that every school is unique. And if the Arcadia Bears want to call theirs one thing, and the Indiana Wildcats want to call theirs something else, is still accomplishing the same thing, which is differentiated instruction, intervention, etc. This year, we were fortunate in that there were a few math specialists out there for us to hire. When we first came out of COVID, we could barely cover our standard classroom assignments. But now, schools that need math help, and at the Arcadia in particular, teachers are retiring, and then they're saying, I see that my services are needed, and they're coming back. So this year was the first year since COVID that we, with the exception of music, we're having an issue finding choral and band teachers at the lower level, because everyone primarily wants, their goals are high school. But we anticipate all of our classes being covered. We certainly will be starting after-school tutoring and partnering with our bus company, Safeway, as we provide transportation for those students home. But differentiation, intervention, and one thing, going back to the old-fashioned writing, because remember, we all used to have the tablets where we wrote. Now, when you ask, depending on what school, what child, a child to write their names, sometimes they print. We said, no, sweetheart, a legal signature means that you're writing. So I invite anyone to look at and to read the school improvement plans. The interventions may be called different things, but they accomplish the same purpose. And the standards are the standards there is established by the state.
Mr. President, this is somewhat of a question comment. It was wonderful to hear every principal touch on parent engagement. I only heard one principal mention a metric to say we are going to have 13 events for the parents. So this is just kind of a question. Maybe there are other principals also have that type of way to measure, to have some type of benchmark for how often parents will have an opportunity and a way to measure that. So that's just kind of a thought that was lingering after hearing everybody's presentation, because I think that sometimes as a parent, understanding the importance of math facts, right, which is kind of simple, but a parent can underestimate the window that is like, this is a necessary moment that you have to get your students to understand this, or else they're not going to be able to build upon it later. So just things like that. Like, I think that having metrics and like really enforcing that for parents is really paramount. Mrs. Weir and I have discussed also the past, how the district has had contests. And so I think it was Ms. Hughes talked about a raffle, and someone else talked about a contest of some sort. So I thought that was really great too, because we've talked about adding like this fun element where families can have opportunities to compete, create, become upon, be involved in competitions. So I thought that was pretty amazing as well.
Well, not everyone mentioned that, but if I could get Mr. Light's help, I think since we have Parent Square, it would be wonderful, Mr. Lights, if we could, by school, on their own sites, list all of the activities, because one
amazing.
principal did mention 12 or 13 activities. However, that isn't even the school that has the most parent activities.
Okay.
So we will take that on as a district responsibility. I think that's a good thing to put it on Parent Square. Everyone sees it, and perhaps they plan their vacation or personal business days around those events. We even have our Christmas dates that are on the calendar, and so therefore we can go into 2025, and we will do that.
Sounds great.
But I think that was the way that one principal chose to present, but it isn't even the school with the most activities. We are emphasizing bringing as many parents back into the building as we can. We have no trouble bringing grandparents back. We have been contacting the senior citizens' homes, and there's been a huge response. We still are maintaining the Matteson reading program that we've had, and some of the students at the high school would like to read at other schools, so I think that that's a way in which we move forward. But this year, and I think this started as a result of the fact that we house an AKA chapter and that we're very involved with the Kappas. We're having just huge input and requests for involvement from, someone mentioned the Divine Nine, but I think it's because they thought about it as a result of these shows that we've been having and the fact that they've been inside the building. And as they come into the building, they ask, what else can I do? And what you can do really is to volunteer, particularly with the smaller children, and give us a help. But we love our grandparents, and I think that perhaps they learn as much as the children do, but also they're in their apartments, and I think it serves more than one purpose, because I do think that there's a sense of loneliness and isolation, and we want their involvement. And so that's another reason that we sent invitations to the nursing homes and to the senior citizens homes and asked them to join us on the stream. We'll see, because Mr. Lice tells us that we can analyze who's joining us on the stream. But even if they don't do that, they may decide to use YouTube. But at the end of this, we're going to take each presentation and put it on the site of the individual schools. So if a parent did not want to listen to all of this, they can definitely see on their Parent Square site what was presented this evening from all of the schools. But there is a similarity, and that's where we are. Thank you, sir.
Just a reminder, you still have a parent waiting.
The next item on the agenda is question of legislation.
We have no legislation. There's the Democratic Convention is in town, and they're in recess.
New business. I entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve the district's and the superintendent's performance objectives for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ware.
Matter's been approved. Entertain another motion, please. Ms. Ware, please.
The board will move to approve the extension of the superintendent's contract.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion, please? This is an opportunity that I look forward to every year, because we add another year on your contract, and that means that we do not have to go through that horrific process of finding a replacement for you, or a substitute. We can't replace you, but a substitute for you. And so
Well, I'm sure it won't be horrific when it's time. It will be something that all of you will look forward to at some point, yes.
No, not at all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ware,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Mr. Bean.
Aye.
Mr. President, may I be permitted, I don't know, once every 4 or 5 years, I ask permission to walk something on. Mr. Hall, last year, the state passed a law indicating that an employee of the district could ask to bring their own child in, but that it required a vote of the board. Am I correct?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Board. The Board, Dr. Davis, has approved the policy that allows that. And now, if somebody would make a request to you, the Board has authorized you to approve that for an employee. The Board's already taken action in approving the policy.
How wonderful. So I withdraw my request to walk something on, and we do have one employee who is asked to bring their child into the district, and I think it'll be a wonderful thing, simply because they're in a complex environment. So thank you very much, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Any old business?
No, sir.
Any board issues and reports?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would just like to say I went to my first administrative retreat this year, and it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I was impressed with how well I got to see how the principals were involved in actually the way things trickle down. As a parent in a district, as long as I've been, I see the student effect. But it was nice to see you all collaborating and coming up with the plans for how things will affect our children this year and in the future. Even though it was in the annex, it was very nice with the snacks, and the food was all well organized. And I like the camaraderie. Everyone got along so well with just enjoying their time. It was nice to see everyone in a relaxed environment. And I also wanted to say how I love Mr. Light's new website. I'm sure it was some other ones, but I went on. I went on a few weeks ago looking for information, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And it was before the retreat, so it was so nice. And then I was able to use the site map to find the exact information I was looking for. I'm very impressed and very glad, and can now recommend it to other people. I got a call, so I was able to send them exactly the school supply list that they were looking for. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like, the next item on the agenda is audience to visitors. Ma'am, this is an opportunity for you to come address the board. I know you kept saying, when is it coming, when is it coming? We're finally there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for your endurance.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, and actually, I thought it was a great opportunity for me to hear all the wonderful work that the principals, the staff, and everyone has involved for the students in this upcoming school year. So I'm really excited that I got the opportunity to see that. So thank you. All right. So I'm going to try to be brief because you all know we're ready to get out of here. So again, I want to just bring some attention to and just share that I think there might be an opportunity for us to improve communications. So I have been now in the school district for 2 years, and I've noticed that communications do come out quite late. So late. And I'm going to give some examples. So, and please think of this as a partnership. I just want to give feedback. I think it's important, especially to hear from parents alike. So we registered for school, and the first time I even heard about, the school supply drop-off, for example, was yesterday. And I think we're just a little bit too late with that. School supply drop-off is a great opportunity, not only for our students, but also for the teachers. The teachers are looking for those supplies to go into their buckets, to inventory their classroom, to share those materials amongst the students. And allowing them some more time to, allowing the parents, number one, time to get those supplies, notification that those supplies are due and when those are due would be important for us to plan, and also for teachers to receive those supplies and plan accordingly for their classrooms. The second thing I want to note, sorry, I'm really nervous. This is my first time doing this. The second thing I thought was important to mention also is notification of just enrollment and busing. I found those communications came the week of, where I've also know that parent peers of mine have called the district and have asked questions about, hey, what's going on with the busing? Or is STEAM school, for example, during the summer still occurring? Because the only information we had was after registration and then that week or the week prior. So again, I think it's an opportunity to, if maybe it's me, it could be that maybe I'm not on some list somewhere, or maybe someone doesn't have my email or contact, but I think there's definitely an opportunity to let parents know weeks prior, a month prior, like when school is starting, confirmation that, this is our school list and these are the supplies and when you need to drop them off. Because we're also involved in other things. Our students are doing activities during the summer, and we all want to make sure that we're also preparing and supporting you all and delivering whatever supplies or resources are needed to start school off right. Okay, I hope that was clear.
Could I ask if you would give Mr. Talley, who's in charge of registration, your information, because I always thought we communicated too much. But anyway, let us check
For
that.
sure.
If that is the case, then I certainly will take that comment on, and if communication really does flow through my office, I wasn't aware that that was the perception, but I will address it.
Really appreciate
For
it.
you, in particular, if you can make sure that our Power School has the direct information, because that's where information flows out.
Exactly. And I know I did receive the text message. The text message came yesterday about school supply drop off, and that was today. I know I am
I know,
receiving
but if
them.
it's
It's the
to-
time.
then
when
that's not enough time.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
agree.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to was there something else on that?
Oh, I thought you were finished, and also I didn't hear your name, address, and what school.
Sorry,
and what school you're.
So
your
my name is
student-
Asia Shadipo. My student is at Arcadia Elementary.
Thank you.
And just as a part two of that, but in terms of communication, again, a number of my parent peers, and I have other friends in other districts, even outside of Illinois, I think we have an opportunity to get together as a community before school begins. I'm noticing a lot of our open houses are occurring after school starts, but I think we can provide an opportunity with open houses, buddy systems, orientations before the school year begins, so that we can set our students up. They're entering into classrooms that they've never been a part of. I'm talking specifically because I had an incoming kindergartner, and not feeling like I had a opportunity for my student to orient before their first day of school, where I'm seeing in a number of other, again, districts, they're going into the classrooms before, they're finding their locker. Maybe they see a familiar face prior to the start of school. And having that as a support system, having that be a tool and a resource to them before the start of the school year enables them to have a smoother start on the first day of school. Having, figured out all the bugs, the kinks, where are they supposed to be, who's their teacher. And then from, I'm hearing a lot of requests for support from parents, and even knowing who your teacher is. Like, I didn't get a notification that I knew who my teacher was. My son's teacher was. I happened to pull up Power School and I was able to find that information. I looked at that last week. But, I think it would be good to have an opportunity to come together with the teachers so that we can better get to know them, understand their teaching methods, understand what they're going to offer. Are they a good fit for a student? I think parents would appreciate that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
May I just, to be quite honest, the Arcadia, the Huth, the first day that they were able to open was yesterday. Because our goals were so ambitious with construction, when did the Illinois open? Friday? Either it was, we promised that we were going to air condition, and then the air conditioning led to roof issues and so forth. So I don't discount that. It would have been absolutely impossible. We have just managed to open because we were trying to do so many ambitious things. And I think that the temperature is going to rise. If we had not done something with the air conditioning, we would have been in the same situation that we were. But we did not anticipate having roof problems, and so we were right up to the end. And the teachers came back today. That's really all that I can say, that I compliment Arcon and our construction companies on doing the very best that they could. One day we had
I understand.
to
Yep.
open, but
And I wanted to mention that I first had this thought when my students started the first year at Arcadia, and I wanted to meet the teachers ahead of time. I wanted to know what the inside of the school looked like. I wanted to make sure the facility was safe. It was a place that I felt comfortable because he is spending the majority of his time there. And I think that a lot of the parents would agree with me as well, that having a space where they can visit with the teachers, having a space where they can walk into the school, understand this is a good space that my student can spend the majority of time would be useful. And again, this is not just this year, it was last year as well. And I was honestly met with, to be honest, some outdated COVID excuses, to be honest, so.
no, it's a union contract, and we can negotiate a memorandum of understanding, but they come back if they choose to for staff development, if they choose to. I think many of them were in the building, not so much this year because I told you the construction, but it would take a renegotiation of the contract to have the teachers in, and certainly it can be done. But they were back today because that's what their contract specifically says. We're a union district for teachers and for the support staff. And so
Understood. There's some hard boundaries there, which I understand. So please just take it as feedback.
Let me think it through.
It does
also-
happen in a number of other districts in other states. It's not unusual. So I understand if there are hard deadlines and constraints around it. Please understand that I do. I don't want to be difficult. I just think
No,
it's
no,
important
you're not
feedback
difficult. I just
from
really just wanted
parents as
to
well.
explain that we're driven by a union contract, and but this year was totally, totally different in that I have been worried about us opening on time, and we have never not opened on time, but the difficulties that we ran into in terms of construction, we were right up. It was yesterday that we opened the Huth, and we didn't finish, and I don't remember the dates of other, but everyone opened last week. That's very unusual.
Understood.
So I apologize.
Yeah.
But let me check on the communication. If we were sending something out and asking you to do something or be available today, it should not have been.
Thank you.
And I accept that.
Appreciate it.
I would rectify.
Are there any other, thank you. Are there any other members of the audience who care to address the board? Are you a member of the audience, sir?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Doug Hamilton. On behalf of the administrative team, I want to thank the board for its continued trust and faith in Dr. Davis. As you can see, her demeanor has never wavered from the time she came here in 2002 till now in terms of her expectations. When she says excellence is our expectation, that has never changed from the time I've been here since 2012 and when I knew her before. So I thank the board for their trust and faith in her. And on behalf of our administrative team, I'd just like to offer the flowers to Dr. Davis as our small token of our appreciation for her ongoing leadership and faith in all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And thank you for your participation in support of the superintendent. Because I know as successful as she is, she couldn't do that without the administrative team that you head up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
there's no further business to come before us, we stand adjourned. And even though we
Thank
didn't
you.
make the 1 hour, it was very productive, and I thank you.
Well, I think so. Principals, can we meet in my conference room just for a second, please?